Under the law of your state, which is set by you, those ballots are illegal. The judge, mistakenly in his opinion, said that we want to disenfranchise 6 million people. We don't want to disenfranchise anyone. We want to disqualify 682,000 votes so that 74 million people are not disenfranchised. Because that's what happened by the cheating that went on here. I'll give you one other enormously puzzling statistic. You sent out in the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania 148 absentee or mail-in ballots. You received back 1.4 million approximately. However, in the count for president, you counted 2.5 million. I don't know what accounts for that 700,000 difference between the number of ballots you sent out and the number of ballots that ended up in the count. That number, 2,589,242, was on your government website until yesterday. And yesterday it was removed without explanation. I'm going to be very interested in hearing what the explanation is. And I can't imagine you could possibly certify without knowing the explanation of that, as well as the explanation to the 22,686 mail-in ballots that were returned on the day they were mailed. That's a trick. How about they were returned, how about 32,591 were returned the day after they were mailed? Another 20,000 were returned before they were mailed. Of course, I think this is a kind of a low count, and I guess the crooks in Philadelphia are disappointed in this. They only submitted 8,021 ballots from dead people, mail-in ballots for dead people. It's probably easier for dead people to submit mail-in ballots than it is to vote in person. You had about 30,000 of those. We're checking the records of the cemeteries around Philadelphia. You have 4,984 mail-in ballots that were never requested, and on and on and on and on. Your election, because of these two counties and maybe one other, is a sham. It's a disgrace to the people of your state, and they owe that to the people of the United States. Because if this happens without consequence, if they can just enter 600,000 some odd mail-in ballots without allowing a single Republican to view it, what's to say that next time they won't do 1 million or 2 million? I know crooks really well. You give them an inch and they take a mile, and you give them a mile and they take your whole country. So now we'll proceed with the witnesses.
Flash drives in all cases. The chain of custody and the procedures that were defined by the Delaware County Board of Elections and Election Process Review they didn't follow one. I couldn't even redline this multi-page document because the entire document would be, they didn't follow any of the procedures. So I personally observed USB cards being uploaded to the voting machines by the voting machine warehouse supervisor on multiple occasions. I saw this personally. I brought it to the attention of the deputy sheriff who was there stationed, who was a senior law enforcement officer, and I brought it to the attention of the clerk of elections. I brought it to their attention. I objected, and I said, this person is not being observed. He's not part of the process that I can see, and he's walking in with baggies, which we have pictures of, and it was submitted in our affidavits, and he was sticking these USBs into the machines. So I personally witnessed that happened 24 times, over 24 times. We have multiple other witnesses that saw it, including Democrat poll watchers. And we were told, I was told the next day by the solicitors, well, actually not the solicitor, but the attorney that we had secured, that they said every election they leave a couple of USBs in the voting machines and they're brought back, and generally the warehouse manager comes over and puts them in. So in talking to the U.S. Attorney General McSwain and other law enforcement officers, I found out that was not the case, that generally, More than 2 is unusual. So they denied they did it, but as of today, 47 USBV cards are missing, and they're nowhere to be found. So I was told personally that these 24 to 30 cards that were uploaded weren't there. Those cards, I demanded that they didn't update the vote live time. They only updated it about once every 2 or 3 hours. I demanded they uploaded the vote so I could see what the result was, and it was 50,000 votes. And I think as a computer scientist, an American, and a patriot, it doesn't matter who those 50,000 votes were. I'll tell you they were for Vice President Biden. But what was shocking to me as an American, as someone who has gone to sea, gone to war, that that could even happen. So several other things that came up was on Thursday, it took us 3 days. We just learned 2 days ago that virtually all chain of custody logs, records, yellow sheets, everything was gone. All forensic evidence, all custody sheets in Delaware County are gone. They had.
My name is Phil Waldron. I'm a retired Army colonel, 30 years. Spent the first half of my career, just like Colonel Mastriano here, as a cavalry officer conducting armed reconnaissance, counter-reconnaissance. Last half of my career spent in information warfare as a psychological operations officer and information operations officer. Conducted computer network operations, electronic warfare, special electronic warfare, deception, counter-deception, and OPSEC, and a couple other specialties.
Sir, sorry.
You still got a Stetson and Spurs. So I spent all of my time as an operations officer. My perspective looking at this problem set is how to break in, how to break it, how to destroy it, how to manipulate it. And my team has been researching this specific issue since August, but we're working with another team that's been intently working on this problem set, the voting machine manipulation, for 2 years, since the Ted Cruz and Beto race in Texas in 2018 and the Kentucky governor's race, where there were significant anomalies observed. And I'd like to add that there are many, many more teams like ours, small teams that are joined in this fight, and they're throwing the flag left and right. So there's a lot of folks who are recognizing anomalies. The voting systems in the U.S. And in Pennsylvania were built to be manipulated. They've been used in elections around the world and stolen elections around the world in Venezuela, Italy, Argentina, Singapore, Bolivia, as close as 2 weeks ago. The Philadelphia uses ES&S, Pittsburgh uses Dominion, other counties in Pennsylvania use Dominion and other systems. So what's the real deal? So all of these election systems have a common DNA. SGO Smartmatic sold Sequoia voting systems to Dominion in 2010, and then the Diebold company spun off Premier Election Systems to Dominion as a result of an antitrust suit. So the bottom line is that these systems have similar code and similar functions. And just so you know, I know there have been statements to the contrary, but I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge of Hugo Chavez's family members who told him not to worry about the populist threat against Maduro's election in Venezuela. Quote unquote, that it was guaranteed. Their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So I have no reason to doubt this gentleman. He's sworn an affidavit to this effect. But that's the root of the SGO voting machines. So these systems are not what you've been told. They are connected to the internet and servers outside of the U.S. They're connected from top to the bottom in the middle. There is no transparency, as our previous witnesses mentioned, as to how the voter information is processed, how and where it's stored. The voting record is able to be modified and or deleted by operators, administrators, and outside threats. Operators can assign votes for write-in, ballots, blank ballots, or error ballots in large numbers so that they can be directed toward one candidate or another at the operator's or supervisor's discretion. And many experts have published how easily these machines can be hacked to manipulate votes. As a matter of fact, one of our white hat hackers previously discovered a malware that's present on the servers that captures every login and every password of every operator down to the precinct level that logs into one of these systems. It's just like giving the password to your bank account out, putting it on the dark web. It's not going to be there very long. And just so you probably are all aware, on 30 September, an election storage facility was robbed in your state. 30 USB devices were stolen and a laptop. Those USB devices more than likely had encryption devices, and you just heard another previous witness talk about the non-standard use of the USB storage devices. So these systems, in a nutshell, allow authorized and unauthorized users to cancel votes, shift votes, preload votes, vote blank ballots, all in real time and in large numbers. They're connected from the top to the bottom. So one bad actor or a team of bad actors can have equally negative inputs. It's been described by another person in another state that we're working with, just like the lotto. Whoever organizes the lotto is always going to win. It's controlling the numbers and it's controlling the margins. Our experts and other academics believe that up to 1.2 million Pennsylvania votes could have been altered or fraudulent. This is what we discovered in the last 22 days. Really, only a detailed forensic analysis of the actual machines and software will truly show how many Pennsylvania citizens have had their civil rights violated. So what our team has done is focused on the spike anomalies. And these are events where a numerical amount of votes are processed in a time period that's not feasible or mechanically possible under normal circumstances. I believe that Greg Stenstrom mentioned earlier the processing of these ballots through machines. There's a manufacturer specified rate of speed that a number of ballots can be imaged and processed.
Could you explain at the very beginning what that line means, Biden injection?
So at the very beginning of the chart where there's a circle, it says on election day, what that indicates is there is a spike in loaded votes, 337,000 plus or minus of some votes that were added in there in one big batch. So that was an anomaly in the reporting. Normally you would expect to see a smooth curve going up, not any big spikes. That's kind of what Greg was talking about, the anomalies of loading and uploading those votes. So that big spike that occurs there is a prime indicator of fraudulent voting.
And that's 604,000 votes in 90 minutes, is that right?
Correct. This is 337 votes, 337,000 votes in that
period of time.
Yes.
And when you look at this entire curve with all these spikes, can you calculate how much of a vote that accounted for Biden and how much for Trump?
Close to 600,000. I think our figures were about 570 some odd thousand that all those spikes represented over time.
For Biden?
Correct.
And how much for Trump?
I think it was a little over 3,200.
Provided our first opportunity to view and learn about the canvassing site on Sunday, November 1st, just 2 days prior to the election. At that visit, the chief operating officer of the county showed us the room where the canvass was to take place. To our shock, we were told we could not directly check the mail-in ballots.
Mail-in ballotings. That House bill, I want to say it was 77, Act 77. I was really kind of taken aback by how eager the governor was to sign that bill. Normally, bills can sit in his desk almost 10 days before he signs them or lets them become law on their own or vetoes them right away. And that one he signed almost instantaneously. And I just kind of wondered. So after I saw what happened in the primary, I wrote House Bill 2626. And this is where it kind of locks it in for me, Mr. Mayor and panelists. In House Bill 2626, I saw where there could possibly be stuffing the boxes. So I said simply, let's put a barcode on the bottom of every mail-out ballot so that the machine has to read a barcode that was accepted by the elections office. Before that ballot goes out, they zap it. When it comes back, if that barcode doesn't match one of the barcodes that they sent out, it gets kicked out. The governor immediately, as soon as we ran that bill out of committee, said, that hits my desk, it's an automatic veto.
One of the biggest things that bothered me more than anything else was people that went to vote and they were told they already voted. That happened. I must have heard it from 50 people in my district. So the new machines, this new process, we didn't vote for it. That was something that was pushed by the governor. He mandated that all of the counties had to go and change their system because he wanted.
Secondly, I'm extremely bothered by the absentee ballot and the mail-in ballot request number being almost 700,000 off from what we received. And so we just did try to get on the Department of State, and they did take down their dashboard, so we can't even check it. So if you have any of that information, any pictures or any, website downloads, we would really appreciate having those because they took them down. So I don't know. Everything they do looks like they're trying to hide something, and it really, really continues to erode any kind of confidence in our process.
Senator, what I would suggest is they decided that morning, or maybe a couple of days before, to exclude you because they knew what they were going to do. It wasn't done. It wasn't an accidental sort of whim to exclude all Republicans. It's unheard of to exclude all Republicans. They excluded you because of what you would see. You would see ballots that weren't properly filled out. You would see ballots that were filled out at the last minute. You would see them start to get reports of how far behind they were because they were connecting to Dominion and Smartmatic, and they were telling them how far behind they were. And you would have caught them right in the middle of the fraud. Why create this big problem for yourself of excluding Republicans in 6 states, hundreds and maybe thousands of them, if you're not doing something wrong? If you're doing something, as the senator said, that's kosher, come on, look, who cares? This big thing wasn't done because they were conducting an honest vote. It's kind of crazy to think that. This was done because they knew this is the only way they could steal this election. And when he was ahead by those numbers on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, they panicked. I'll also tell you there's an expert witness who can testify that this pattern fits the pattern that Smartmatic used in 2 elections that they stole in South America. When the election was getting too far away, they called a halt in the voting count. Well, there was a halt called in 6 places, including in Pennsylvania. In one place, they made believe there was an overflowed water tank. It happened to be one little toilet bowl. They took a 2-hour halt, and in Michigan, they brought in 100,000 ballots through the back door and counted them with nobody observing them, except 3 people who happened to be remaining behind. That's evidence that's also in affidavits and could be presented to the Michigan legislature. Those people are willing to testify. And just one other thing, these people are very brave people.
Another head scratcher. I'm comparing Republican to Republican, Democrat to Democrat. We all know that Biden did better with mail-in, and that was expected because a lot more Democrats voted by mail, and of course the president did better on Election Day. Nothing to see there. However, when we compare President Trump to a relatively unknown candidate named Stacey Garrity, who was elected a Republican who won the race for treasurer, on Election Day, the president did 128,000 votes better than Ms. Garrity. on Election Day. Not really all that surprising. A number of people don't vote down ballot and so forth. Yet with mail-in ballots, she did 41,000 better than the president. I have a hard time understanding that. Let's go to Joe Biden. We have a relatively well-known attorney general here, Democrat, Josh Shapiro, who won re-election. He, on Election Day, he defeated Joe Biden by 52,000 votes. He did 52,000 better than Joe Biden. Yet with the mail-ins, Biden does 54,000 better than Shapiro. And I just sort of want to get that on everybody's radar.
Because the actual data has incomplete registrations. It's not just the faulty addresses or the strange addresses. They say, number of 2020 voters in Nevada, CD3, whose voter registration lists invalid birth dates, birthday equals 0 and birth month equals 0, and unknown sex by year of registration. We can see that in 2018, the midterms, 156, seems like nothing. Look at that, in 2012, 0. In 2016, 68. In 2020, 13,372 incomplete registrations or improperly filled out registrations. They say 74% took place between July and September. Morgan found that in the last presidential election, there were 68 voter registrations missing the critical data. In 2020, it was 13,372. What's more, 74% of the incomplete registrations took place between July and September this year. In her 2-page affidavit provided to Secrets, Morgan wrote, this investigation found over 13,000 voters whose voter registration information revealed no sex or date of birth. Not only does this mean we cannot verify whether these voters are old enough to vote, it's also historically strange. While one does not expect voter registration information to be perfect, it is very strange that there were very, very few of those kinds of imperfect records with missing or invalid information until this year, when there are 13,372 of them. Several addresses were odd too, she wrote. I have also identified dozens of voters who listed as their home or mailing addresses a temporary RV park and casino, she wrote. In a Thanksgiving Day interview from her Texas home, Morgan said, it's weird. So what I found was that there are just a lot of people who have 0 birthday, 0 birth month, and then unknown sex. Then she said, after checking past history of 2020, I saw is that you have a handful of people, and then all of a sudden you have 13,000 people making that error in 2020, and that's just not right. Her affidavit was filed on behalf of Dan Rodemer, who lost his election to Rep. Susie Lee in Nevada's 3rd Congressional District. He lost by 13,000 votes.